Right now, though, let's talk about the Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. At the time of this recording, the Chiefs are laying a point and a half. The total is 48 and a half. You know what? Because he seems to be chomping at the bit to get to it, I'm going to defer to you. Kevin Hench, tell us, how do you see Super Bowl LIX playing out?
Well, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be so devastated by this Luka Doncic trade. He just
Hmm,
won't be able to keep his head in the game as
big
he
Mavs guy.
realizes as he tapes his 1000th State Farm commercial and realizes it's actually all about money. Uh, so if you look back at the Jalen Hurts laying the ball on the ground and awarding the Chiefs a touchdown in a 3-point loss in this Super Bowl matchup a couple of years ago. Without that play, the Eagles win that game, obviously. Um, how have the teams changed significantly since then? A lot of the principles are the same. Um, Saquon Barkley, in this era where it's like get Isaiah Pacheco in the seventh round, man. It doesn't matter. One guy matters. One guy matters. And the fact that the commies spent a week preparing to stop Saquon and make Jalen Hurts beat you, and he scored on the first play from scrimmage, what it says to me is that he breaks the game plan. He does things. He gets on that second level with so much burst that you can't just say, well, we're going to put all these guys in the box, and then Jalen Hurts is going to check to a passing play, and we'll have him right where we want him. By the way, Jalen Hurts threw some great balls in that victory over the commies. That one teardrop to AJ Brown down the left sideline. So I think the addition of Saquon and the Chiefs, obviously I've lost a lot of money betting against the Chiefs. I'm prepared to lose more. I think the Chiefs have just, James Cook averaged 6.5 yards a carry against them. So naturally, when the Bills needed less than a yard, they ran the Josh Allen lateral sneak instead of just giving it to the guy who's ripping off huge chunks every play. Joe Mixon had a really nice game running the ball against the Chiefs. Guess who's better than Joe Mixon and James Cook? Saquon Barkley. So I like Saquon over. I think he is going to break one of his big runs. And
Hmm.
basically, if he breaks off one of his big runs, he's going to go over his total. Like, he's going to get the 50 the hard way, and then you just tack on the 70 to that. And then so I would bet Saquon over his long run of the game. I think he's going to break one over his total. And I like the Eagles to exact revenge 28-27. Fly, Eagles, fly. Do it for America, Philly. We're so fucking sick of these guys. Come on.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of good response to Hench's anti-Chiefs dynasty jag a week ago. The problem is, obviously, is that it's not like the Eagles or Philadelphia as a sports town is all that popular either. A
That's how
anti-hero, I
sick of the
guess.
Chiefs we are.
Yeah. So like the Eagles are like Steve McQueen, in other words. Like they're not Cary Grant. They're a gruff anti-hero, if you will. What by the way, Hench, I know time is short for you. First Super Bowl you remember watching.
Oh, easy. You'll remember this one. Super Bowl 10, Steelers Cowboys, Lynn Swan, watching with my dad, explain. I was a little kid, he explained the point spread to me. I got the Cowboys +6 against him. We bet on that game. I took the Cowboys +6. He was happy because he wanted the Steelers to win. I was happy because I got a crisp dollar bill. So I remember very clearly watching that game with my dad. You're a little younger than I am, so I don't know if that one pops up in your
No,
memory.
well, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Shek, and I are perusing all the props right now, father and son type of behavior. Well, don't worry, we're not going to go too big. Biggest bet at best will be $17,000 on any one prop. Don't. It's not like we're going to get out of hand or teach bad lessons to the kid or whatever. People up on Mount Pius. Now I remember watching the first one. I remember watching was Super Bowl 12. the Broncos with Craig
Sure.
Morton losing to the Cowboys, the one big breakthrough. It's funny to think that's the seminal moment for the 70s Cowboys was Tony Dorsett as a rookie, and all of that was beating the meh Denver Broncos that year. Really should have been the Oakland Raiders. Spaghetti, how say you? Dill, what was your first Super Bowl? Let me see if I can guess
I
it.
was just gonna ask you. I was gonna make you guess, and I can give a hint, but if I give the hint, it's gonna be way too easy. But this is a Super
You're
Bowl you have.
32.
It's a Super Bowl you have talked about before for a very specific reason.
You're 32 years young,
Yeah,
right?
born in '92, so obviously it's a Super Bowl that took place in the '90s. There's a hint.
Well, I mean, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, wait, my first Super Bowl that I remember, I was 7 years old, so
You're
or six
close.
years old.
That's
So wait, so okay, so well then you're doing the math for me there. So it would have been, wait, is
yeah.
it?
You're making the face. You know it.
Well, no, I'm trying to think. Is it? Would it be the
The bad one, the one you hate.
Elway? Oh, it's Elway over the Falcons.
That's the one.
That's
That
the that
that's
that
pretty
is
terrible.
that is the worst Super Bowl,
I know.
I think. And here's the proof that I always have for people with when anybody nerdy enough to debate me on worst Super Bowl. Um, 13-3 sucked for many reasons.
Mhm.
Obviously, should have been Drew Brees and the Saints getting there. So morally, it was wrong that the Rams were there. Salvaged a little bit by them wearing the throwback uniforms, but the game itself sucked. Would have been better. Talk about a superior bowl if, well, the Saints getting there would have been better, but also a rematch of the November game that we went to at the Coliseum,
Mhm.
51-48, Rams and Chiefs. Just give us that rematch. Because what's ironic and funny about that one is we were at that game, and then for the next month, the conversation was, how will football ever get back? This is football now. It's all going to be these no defense games. It's going to be all these shootout games. What's going to change that? Final score of the Super Bowl, total of 16 points between the two teams. The two best teams in football scored a combined 16 points. That was a terrible Super Bowl, but worse was Super Bowl 33 Falcons. Here's the other thing about that Falcons team is that talk about being underserved by history. We think of them as some bum team because Gary Anderson for the Vikings at 15-1 misses the field goal that would have sent them to the Super Bowl basically, and instead overtime happens. Morton Anderson makes that kick. The Falcons were they 14-2 or were they 13-3? I should know this off the top of my head, but they were the best. Like also ran. Boy, that
14
team
two.
sucked. 14-2. I mean, it's almost weird. They're sort of on the level of the Tennessee Titans with Kerry Collins the one year 2008, the year that the Ravens and Steelers were the apparent two best teams in the AFC. But Kerry Collins and the Titans were also right up there at the top of that. Okay, we're in the Wayback Machine here. That's the worst Super Bowl
Yeah.
in my book. Is that? Oh, you count that one?
Well,
You
I
must.
don't
I'm
really.
surprised you went back to it. Sort of like when how I've described watching the HBO series Real Sex. Like if you ever see that, like it could potentially, if that's your first visual of what people do with each other, putting themselves on top of each other nude. If you watch those like middle-aged people with the bodies that should not be put on camera for just random people to look at, and then they go on their retreats, their lovemaking retreats out in the fields, and they lay there nude with ponytails. I'm talking about the men, and they sit like the men sit with like one knee up, but they're nude. Like
Mhm.
they just sit like they sit Indian style, or they're just listening intently to the instructor who's teaching them proper lovemaking techniques. And they just like sit around, but they're like, just like you would with your pals. If it's like, hey, just gather around, the coach is going to tell you some stuff here before practice gets going here, except that everybody's nude. That's the only difference. And they're all just sitting around until it's time for them to do group stuff, like how to teach a woman how to have a proper orgasm. And so then they lay her down, and then all the other nude people gather around her and they touch her on every extremity, and they all like massage her body. And then you watch her and she goes like, oh, 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 oh. And if like that's the first thing you've ever seen, you'd be like, well, that's not for me. I don't want anything to do with that. That's sort of like you watching Super Bowl 33.
So we're still
I'm surprised you
so we're still
stayed a
talking
football fan.
just making sure we're talking Broncos Falcons, and that somehow came up. No, that wasn't my.
No,
I
that's
mean,
what I think it must be
I
like to
get
be
I
to
get
be
the
naked with
analogy.
Chris Chandler. If I were
I
with Chris Chandler, that's how I would be. I'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're losing the thread. Continue
I
with
don't
your
remember that game a ton, but it was for sure the first Super Bowl I really do remember because I do remember like the Dirty Bird, like the Jamal Anderson stuff. I remember Elway. I remember that game was in Florida. Like it was the first like pre-Super Bowl stuff remember. I obviously knew that the Packers were in it the 2 years prior. I even have like the team photos for whatever reason in my house. Like my dad got them, like the Packers
Hmm.
Patriots team photos when they take the picture of the Super Bowl. So I knew those happened, but I don't remember the day of the game. But I do think the worst Super Bowl was for
Well, let me just
me.
say the two things that I'll say about 33 are one, the only two things anybody can ever tell you about that game. One, John Elway's long touchdown pass to Rod Smith. There is
Mhm,
not another memory that exists from that game. I would question its existence, period, were it not for that long touchdown pass. And then Eugene Robinson, the NFL Man of the Year nominee or winner. I don't know if he was a winner. I think it was a nominee for the Falcons, was at the Bunny Ranch or otherwise
mhm.
on the eve of the game. So yeah, those are that was your Super Bowl, everybody.
Yeah, the
That
first
was a
one I
good one.
remember, but I think the worst for me was probably that Rams Patriots one you just talked about. I think I was working that day too at the NFL, and that game had no juice to it, and I was like, man, oh man, this is brutal. But I guess if you had to work a Super Bowl, it's probably the best one to work. So with this upcoming game, and
Super Bowl 13 is your best Super Bowl. And Super Bowl 49 was great. The first half of 13, first half of Super Bowl 49. And then those last few minutes of Super Bowl 49 are great. The most forgotten one is Super Bowl 43, the last Super Bowl down there in New Orleans
mhm,
when the Ravens bested the Niners. That one's a gem, like
yeah,
start to finish, with so many weird
the
soap
blackout.
opera type of moments with the Harbaugh brothers. And then it looks like the Ravens are going to smoke them, but then the blackout happens,
Mhm.
and then the Niners with the big rally. That's one of the great games, and probably the most forgotten great Super Bowl that we've had. I think the most overrated one is the Patriots rally over the Falcons. Just a bunch of, go back and watch it. Just a bunch of dump offs. The rally is all predicated on a bunch of 9 yards at a time with Julian Edelman's insane catch mixed in there.
Mhm.
It's not that great a game. It's the seminal win of the Patriots dynasty maybe, but it's not that satisfying a watch for an objective football fan.
That's a perfect tie-in to how I feel about this game. Because I could say any worse Super Bowl is any Patriots victory for me. Like
Hmm.
just it's because we all hated the dynasty. I hated the dynasty. I'm a fan of an NFC East team. What does it matter what an AFC East team does? It for some reason got under my skin. Like I don't feel the same way about this Chiefs team. And now, as I'm older and that dynasty's kind of finished, and seeing Tom move on to the Buccaneers and winning, you kind of like, all right, like, and I personally think that Brady has been okay, in the booth like lately. So I'm like, you kind of do like a 180, maybe not a full 180, but I'm kind of turning on Brady a little bit, where I'm like, wow, I do respect the greatness and like seeing what Mahomes is trying to do, just trying to get even like half or get near what Brady does. Like I'm like, how could you even hate this new guy more than what the old guy did for 20 years? So I don't have a hatred for the Chiefs. And plus, between me, you, and Hench, like obviously I have the rooting interest, right? I guess like an anti-rooting interest, negative interest in the Eagles. I don't want the Eagles to win because I'm a fan of the Giants, and they're, in my opinion, their
Sure.
chief rival. That's the Eagles. There is a weird, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. There is a very weird kind of like perversion going on in some Giants fans' brains where they're like, I want the Eagles to win because I'm so sick and tired of the Mara family and how everything has been run, since Ernie Accorsi left, and the way that the firing of Tom Coughlin went down, and obviously with this past year with the Saquon stuff, the Daniel Jones contract. I mean, I could list a million different things, but they're like, you know what? Screw them. Let the Eagles win. I want to be rock bottom. Like, oh, you can't even tank properly. You have to get the third pick in this draft. And now with if the Browns trade Myles Garrett, who knows if a team comes up and swoops in and they take a quarterback and quarterbacks go 1-2. Like people are just losing losing their minds. So there is a weird section of the Giants
That's
fan
dumb.
base that it
That's
is
a
extremely dumb.
that's a dumb reason to try and talk yourself into rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's
Totally agree.
nonsense. Don't do
I,
that
I
shit.
I totally agree with that. So I hate those fans, but that's how angry and pissed off just some Giants fans are. With this game, I do think
But I have heard some people legitimately say like, "Hey, pride, NFC East pride. Like, what's wrong
that's
with
it's
you?
not
What happened
no,
to you?
it's
What
just
happened? What
also a weird
happened?
thing like college football like well my SEC team lost, but I still
You're a
want
kook.
SEC dominance. Like get out of here with that. You rather the
If
team in the
you
Pacific Northwest win.
I like the very sober college football fans. They're like, I've had this conversation with some of my IU pals. In fact, they're like, it's good that Ohio State won. I'm like, you like seeing the Buckeyes? They're like, it's good because it gives money to the conference. Like, that's not your concern, man. That's not
Yeah,
our concern. That's not the level of things that we're dealing with. You're not a part. You're not getting a cut of the action. Ergo, who cares about that? You want those teams, and I think you're spiritually right. The worst to root against your arch rivals, but as much as you can put that, I think the worst results of these Super Bowls are. I think what happened. I said it at the time. I leaned into it a year later, 2 years later, and here we still are. I think the worst Super Bowl, aside from what it did to burnish the legacy of Tom Brady, was the Buccaneers winning that Super Bowl. I think that sucked. He used the Buccaneers, his 1A choice. He didn't want to play for Tampa Bay. He wanted to play for another Florida football team. He wanted to own the Miami Dolphins like he now does the Raiders
Mhm.
because the rules don't apply to him apparently. But he wanted to own the Dolphins and install himself like Tom Jarrett does in Heaven Can Wait as the starting quarterback of the Dolphins. When that didn't work out, only then did he go to Tampa Bay again to stick it to his good pal, his longtime colleague, Bill Belichick. It was more important for him to stick it to Belichick. And so he did. And then he wins the Super Bowl. And I just find it very hard. And I haven't heard a whole lot of pushback from Buccaneers fans out there that tells me I'm wrong about that. Like, yeah, it was fun and it's a fun ride to be a part of the journey to a Super Bowl, but it is the Florida Marlins winning the Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's the
Well,
equivalent of that. Like you mercenaried your way, and it doesn't resonate a couple years later. Who gives a crap? You won that weirdo Super Bowl with some hired guns from Foxborough. Good for you. I think it diminishes the value of winning the Super Bowl and the Lombardi living in your football town for all of time and all of that. How much pride if you're in Tampa or St. Peter, like, oh, that magical Tom Brady, that magical run we had with the mercenary from the Patriots. That was terrific.
I think once you get into the free, I view things differently. I understand your perspective, especially with your Pittsburgh teams where they keep a lot of the same players for years and years and years. I think once you move on to the free agency era where players move around, like that doesn't bother me as much. And I understand what you're saying. Like you want to have a homegrown guy lead you and have like the improbable run and Tom Brady and Gronk teaming up, like could be viewed as a negative. But I think to me, it's more as a fan of I don't care about the Buccaneers. I thought them teaming up, they're old, oh yeah, Bruce Arians the coach. He's a fun guy. Like that to me was like more of a fun team and it didn't bother me. Plus, like that's like literally when the Tampa Bay was like the center of the sports world when like the Lightning were in their dominant run. And I'm pretty sure that's like around the same year as like when the Rays like beat the Yankees in
It
like the
is, but
LDS, the
but
LCS.
right, but it's the same thing as like I like a really good steak with a big baked potato and the blue cheese wedge,
Hmm.
the salad wedge beforehand. And if I'm feeling real fancy and hungry, I go with the lobster bisque somewhere in between. And now I'm stuffed and satiated versus eating some churro ice cream. That's what the Buccaneers are. Like it was fun to eat the churro ice cream. It didn't last more than a few minutes of satisfaction, but it counted, but it's a different level of enjoyment, right?
Yeah, I
I don't know if
think
that analogy worked. Let's
no,
go back
I
to
get.
hand jobs.
Yeah, and real sex. I again, like I just to wrap that up, like I didn't hate that Super Bowl. I thought it was fun and a weird, different team up, and he proved he could do without Belichick and whatever. And that one I did not hate as much. But I did hate when Tom was wearing, the Patriots logo on his helmet. That it was in the Belichick era. That stunk. I hated it. But again, don't feel the same way about Mahomes. If the Eagles win this one, especially after winning the one with Foles, which was, an improbable one, again, they beat Brady. So I was not even, that game, like, I obviously, the joke is like they wish that Bane comes and blows up the stadium. Like, that's kind of how I felt with that Eagles Patriots Super Bowl because I really did hate both teams equally. This one, like the Chiefs in this game. I'm hoping that I see a three-peat, the first time in NFL history. I think Mahomes is fantastic. But if I had to pick a roster, I'd rather have, I think really outside of quarterback and I guess tight end, even though Kelsey had a down year, I would probably still take Kelsey over Goddard, just because of his, on-field knowledge, and he's still a great route runner. I think the Eagles beat him in every really every part of the game. I think they beat him in. I think that, Hench was saying that he thinks Saquon's gonna have a big game. I do think the Chiefs have done an okay job at stopping the run. Like Mixon had, I think, 88 yards. Cook had like 84, 85. If they hold Saquon in the 80s, I think that's a path to victory, which is like obviously the most thing you're going to put on a sports channel. You're going to hear people saying like, if they stop Saquon, they can win. It's obvious, but it is true. I think that the Chiefs, with McDuffie, Eagles like to throw the goal ball, the deep routes. I think if he shuts down AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, one of the two, and they only have the one receiver, they have to really focus on. I think that does help them. Is Jalen Hurts going to be able to make plays with his arm? We'll see. Because I do think Andy Reid will do a good job of slowing him down with the runs. I think everything in this game though, like the way how the Eagles have been so dominant, it leans towards like the Eagles should win this game. But it hasn't really been a Chiefs game where you're like, man, they are really good. Obviously, everything coming from that game versus Buffalo with the Chiefs, it was all about like what went wrong or did the NFL screw over the Bills because in their people's minds, like the Bills could have or should have won that game. That was never really the case with the Eagles in any of their games, and especially with how the Eagles played in their last game versus the Commanders, who had a mobile quarterback who has been lethal, similar to Mahomes, and they handle him pretty well. So everything is screaming. Pick the Eagles. They're the better roster. They've been on fire lately. The Chiefs haven't really shown us anything. They are dealing with still injuries from the beginning of this season. Rashee Rice is not there, obviously at full go. Who knows if things would be different? But there's just something in the back of my head that's just like, why are you going to pick against Patrick Mahomes? Like things are. You say
Muscle
all the
memory. You
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 say
shouldn't
all the
pick against it.
analysis. You say why the Eagles should be better than in certain things, and then you're going to get in this game, and it's going to be in the fourth quarter, and it's going to be like 16-14 or 16-13, and Mahomes gonna have the ball with like two and change, 3 minutes left, and he's gonna go on the field and find a way to score a touchdown. And then the Chiefs, and then Jalen Hurts gonna have to go the length of the field with no timeouts, with like 30 seconds, and that's not gonna happen. So I think we're gonna see a three-peat.
I think I think that's the sound pick. Muscle memory dictates that you should give a good look to the Chiefs, even if what is on a piece of paper doesn't support that thinking. It's sort of the thing I keep saying, the major thing I got wrong about the Eagles this year was that while I understood Saquon Barkley was an upgrade at running back for them, he wasn't that much better than DeAndre Swift, was my contention. Like, okay, how much better is Saquon? How much can he elevate an Eagles offense that had a very good running back in DeAndre Swift last year? And now we see the results of that. So I have to wear that, and I will wear that. It's the same thing with Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, or Patrick Mahomes v. Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Is those guys are great. Those guys are top five quarterbacks, are Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, but Patrick Mahomes is a tick better than they are, and he continues to prove that. Jalen Hurts, weirdly, I feel like gets so marginalized, and has been, by the coaching staff. I'm
Mhm.
not talking about the talking heads. Um, that we don't consider him as as a difference maker in a positive sense for the Eagles. But of course, that is what he is. I think obviously Mahomes is an advantage over Jalen Hurts, as he is against anybody, but I don't think it's that significant a difference. I think we're imbuing Mahomes with powers that he rightly has shown he has against the best in the sport. The gap is closed, to your point, by the Eagles and specifically the offense, which truly is pick your poison. You would say that about the Chiefs maybe a couple of years ago, but truly what the Chiefs did, and we said this, we talked to Matt Verderam a couple of weeks ago that,
Mhm.
Andy Reid is in such a position of luxury with Mahomes and the weapons he has that he can hold back a little bit. And clearly he did that they unfurl new plays in January. You really have to be sitting in a luxurious seat to be able to hold back something against the best in the world and only show it when the games really, really start to matter. It's the same sort of thing you see with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson running a little bit more than they did in October because now the stakes are higher. In a similar way, I feel like the Eagles held back Jalen Hurts, but when they needed him to win the game, against Washington, he did exactly that. And I know you can say
Mhm.
Saquon started the game with the first play of line of scrimmage. He ran a 150-yard touchdown and broke their back right out of the gate there. But Jalen Hurts is the one dropping dimes when called upon to do it. And given that the Chiefs, and Hench's point is right that they did that some good running backs did have good days against this Chiefs defense in 2024. Look though at the what you would figure to be sort of the focal point of an offense when the Chiefs when the focal point of an offense they were facing was the running back. They did a good job against him. The problem is that this Chiefs defense is a tick down from where it's been, and against the pick your poison Eagles offense, the Eagles are going to pick whatever the Chiefs aren't taking away from them. That's going to be enough for the Philadelphia Eagles to win this Super Bowl 31-27.
Hmm.
I think Leonard Marshall of your 1990 New York Giants like it. They stopped Joe Montana and the Niners from three-peating. David Volek stopped my Pittsburgh Penguins from three-peating way back in 1993. And now I think Jalen Hurts stands as the man who disrupts history or alters history because if I am right that the Eagles win this game, and what's more, Jalen Hurts is your Super Bowl 59 MVP. He is now on the path to getting a gold jacket for himself, whether you like that or not, or whether or not you think he's a top 10 QB. That's exactly where he's going to be, having played in 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years against Patrick Mahomes, almost beating him the first time, getting over the hump the second time. And the Philadelphia Eagles celebrate. Fly, Eagles, Fly is the song you hear at the end of the game.
I hope not. Predicting a gold jacket is very
I didn't
interesting.
predict he's going to get it. I'm just saying he's now
In
on the
line.
path
I know.
to
I
doing it.
understand being in a Super Bowl. In 2 Super Bowls, winning one. I guess the point I didn't make of it, if it sounds like I'm just covering both my bases by saying the Eagles are the better team and the Chiefs are going to end up winning, though. I think the difference is if you look back at the games the Eagles played, the 3 in the playoffs to get to this point. The common theme has been turnovers. What is it? 4 turnovers, 2 turnovers, 4 turnovers, I think,
Great point.
is when it went. The only quarterback I think who didn't throw interceptions was Matt Stafford, but the 2 other quarterbacks they played were Jordan Love, Jaden Daniels, 2 younger quarterbacks. What Jordan Love did give them a run for their money in the Brazil game, which was a weird game way back in the beginning of the season. But the Eagles
What
kind of
seems
all
longer ago, that game or Isaiah
crazy.
Likely's toe in Arrowhead?
If you
That was this football season,
wearing the
everybody.
wrong color cleat. Yeah, I know that
And Nick
seems forever ago.
Sirianni arguing with Eagles fans. That was
That
this season, and now they're in the Super Bowl.
incredible turnaround, and I do feel like they were. I'm not going to use the word lucky, but they were fortunate that they played the Commanders for a third time in the title game. Who knows if Look, the Rams came very close to winning this game, to winning the game versus the Eagles. I think they did a good job, and I think it's because of Matt Stafford, a veteran presence, not turning the ball over. The Commanders. Eagles beat them the first time in the regular season. They were up like 20 points versus them. And then that's obviously, Kenny Pickett is in that game. They kind of took the foot off the gas. They lost that one. I wasn't shocked they blew out the Commanders because they kind of had their number. And I think Mahomes, to me, and to everyone, he's close. Like Matt Stafford being a veteran presence, Mahomes is, a veteran too, despite him not being that old because he's just been there, done that, used to it. And he's going to be able to get back in those like long drops like he always does. And he has a quick release if he has to get the ball out. He's not going to turn the ball over like the Jordan Love did, or like Jalen Hurd, Jaden Daniels did. I think he's going to be smarter with the ball. And if the Eagles aren't going to win the turnover battle, I think it does make things harder. And we saw that kind of happen in the
It's a
game
good point.
versus the Rams, where the Rams were they were in it because Stafford was playing smart football, and he did throw for over 300 yards in that game. So I think, to make my point better as to why I do actually think the Chiefs will win, despite the roster and the Eagles being, in my point, the supreme roster. I think it's really because of Mahomes just being more cerebral than maybe Jaden Daniels or Jordan Love in these moments, and he's calm, cool, collected because he lives in the Super Bowl. So I think, to maybe bolster my point, that's the reason why I
Well,
think.
I think that's I think there's something too as well. I mean, obviously people will say that's simplistic. Wait, you like the Chiefs because Mahomes? Yeah,
Yeah,
he's the greatest quarterback
yeah,
of all time. That's a
yeah.
reasonable
Stop Saquon
thought.
and Mahomes playing well. Big
I do
analysis.
think it goes out saying it's a career big spot for Jalen Hurts. I think he's better equipped this time. I think there is something to. I've been in this spot before. Combined with, it's not like he's plagued with the Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type of legacy conversation right now. Like, you got to get this one, Jalen. You may never be back. He doesn't present in that way. I'm sure he has a different level of confidence about himself, but he's not tasked on the same level
Mhm.
with, for what it matters. The narrative is like, can Lamar get past Mahomes? Nobody's saying, can Hurts take down Mahomes? But it is essentially in the QB league, as I will say forever, the QB wins matter. And Jalen Hurts does at some point have to provide the difference. This is not Bob Greasy on the Dolphins in the early 70s anymore. You can say he's a passenger along for the ride, but in the 21st century, at this stage in it at least, the quarterback does still have to make some plays. I think Jalen Hurts makes them. I think the reason the Chiefs keep it close, I think the reason this game goes over is one, because the Eagles have a borderline unstoppable offense. On the other side of it is, we're giving Andy Reid 2 weeks to prepare for this game with the best quarterback of all time. I think both teams are going to, more often than not, have their way offensively. We keep trying to talk ourselves into why the game's going to be down. Well, these are two good defenses, everybody. Yeah, I get they're two good defenses. They're two better offenses, though. As good as that Eagles defense is, and again, what you're looking for, to your point about turnovers, isn't to shut down Patrick Mahomes, to silence him to 13 points. It's to create an extra possession or two over the course of the 60 minutes. I think with Jalen Carr, I have pointed at that Eagles defense since August as one that is going to rise up and make a difference. It's not to say that they're going to silence the Kansas City Chiefs juggernaut. It's that they can create one extra possession for Jalen Hurts and company. They do it. They win the Super Bowl. The Eagles are it. And then we talk about on the other side what might have been the moment that has escaped the Chiefs that they will never get back, which is being in position to three-peat, or maybe we are celebrating where the Chiefs stand in terms of all-time dynasties. We'll look forward to having that conversation